somebody who comes with 33 years experience in the Miami-Dade. ¿Empieza otra vez? Hi there, empowered ladies. Welcome back to another episode of Mari Trilogy. Today we have Marlene Reyes, who brings 33 years of education experience in the Miami-Dade County school system. And we are going to be discussing education, which is a very important topic for ladies out there listening to our podcast. Welcome, Marlene. Thank you for your time today and being here with us.
Thank you for having me.
That's wonderful. So this is a casual conversation that we will be having, and I have some questions for you. I raised 2 kids here in Miami, so I know what the education system was back then. I don't know what it is today, so I'm sure you're going to bring us up to date on all of that stuff. But what inspired you to become an educator?
I think the inspiration is really part of just who I am. I have this innate drive to always help people or children. When I was a kid, children out of jams, teaching them how to do things in ways that would facilitate or make things easier for them, depending on what they were trying to accomplish. In fact, the way it all started was there was a 5-year-old kindergartner. It was a neighbor down the street that had come from Cuba, and she was going to the same elementary school that I went to. And so I used to walk after school to her apartment because she lived on the side of a house. And I would help her with homework and start teaching her in English so that she in turn would be able to teach her mom in English.
Oh,
And so that was the start of it. I think it's always been part of who I am, really.
yeah. Well, as far as I've known you, I mean, all my life, but yeah, you've always been surrounded by kids for some reason or other. Okay?
Yes.
Whether it's by choice or not, but I remember you always being surrounded by children. So you are currently retired from the Miami-Dade school system, is that correct?
That's correct.
But you're still working as an assistant principal at a Montessori school.
Correct.
So how does that differ from the regular system?
Well, what's interesting is I retired thinking I would never look back.
Mm-hmm.
And as I stated earlier, it's just who I am. It's embedded in me to help others, to show them how to think outside the box, to look at their skill sets and build from there. So through a former coworker who was the executive director and principal of her own charter in Miami-Dade County, I learned from her as to how to take my skill set and turn my company into the type of company that through Miami-Dade County Public Schools could also service.
Oh.
And so I went into the private business component of it and became a vendor. And that's how I was approved through Miami-Dade County Public Schools.
Oh.
Through that journey at a conference with the Florida Institute for Charter Schools, I came across another young lady who had a charter school in distress. She had taken on a challenge to turn it around, not just academically, but even financially.
Mm-hmm.
And I've learned a little more about how charter world functions within the education system as compared to your traditional public school. Now, they both have to follow the same state guidelines and state standards. For the most part, the same types of curriculum that are embedded in the schools.
Mm-hmm.
This particular one that I'm at now also infuses Montessori methods, which, as our conversation earlier was, most Montessori schools, I want to say maybe 99%, are actually private school. So when families can't afford to bring children to that type of teaching method, then they get, kind of cheated out of that opportunity if that's something that interested them. So that's why I found jumping back into education now from this route was more than just being an assistant principal at a school or anything of that matter. It was more about opening the pathway to those who probably would not have that opportunity. Not everyone has the socioeconomic status or means, right, to pay for a private school. And if you do your research, you'll find that private Montessori schools are quite expensive. So that's how I went full circle right back into it. Again, trying to open up pathways to people who wouldn't even know it was an opportunity for them.
Yeah. I looked into that for my own children years ago, obviously, and it was expensive then, so I can imagine. Who or what has been your greatest influence and how you on how you teach and lead today?
I wouldn't say it was a single person. I think it's a combination of all the women that I have encountered from my teen years up, as well as certain male role models. So I did have a fantastic show choir teacher in high school, and he was very family based, very had good morals, good values, integrity. So his methods of reaching out to the students in high school, which is a challenge to keep you engaged in the whole concept of education, was one that opened up another way to view things and how to transpire my own shortcomings at that time, being so young. My dad being one of them, the work ethic, the making the family priority. That was another perspective, because fortunately or unfortunately, depending on how you see things, the way things are marketed, the way things are exposed, especially in today's world, everything looks easy, everything looks quick, everything looks now. I want it and it's now, and that's not reality. And reality is there's a lot of behind the scenes work that people don't see. There's a lot of legwork. There's a lot of tired days. There's days where you do things you may not want to do, but if you don't cross those bridges, you can't get to the next level of whatever it is you're trying to accomplish. And it's trial and error. There's a lot of trial and error. So between the women that I've encountered, you being one, because as a child, you took me, and you probably don't even remember this. You had a Camaro, and you took me with you to a medical office that you were working at that time, and I spent the day. And I even remember what we had for lunch. We had Chili's for lunch. We had So it's those moments where I was seeing individuals in action, and it's one day I want to be like that. And that, from every single person I've encountered, helped form who I am today and evolve. So I think it's a little bit of everyone. I've had really strong business women that I say, oh, the person doesn't have a heart, but I've learned so much from those people.
You always learn.
And then you have those that have so much heart, they're exhausted, and they're a hot mess on another area. So I think at the end of the day, what I find is that it's really about everyone's strengths and identifying as individuals what those are, and working relationships is what builds the bigger picture. And through that philosophy, I have built my future. That's how I've unfolded it.
That's amazing. That's amazing. And thank you very much for your comment. I would have never thought I would have touched it that way, but I'm so humbled and I'm glad I did. How do you see education as a tool for empowerment? Remember, this is a Powered Women podcast, and give me your piece on that.
Well, I am a big believer that education is a strong foundation and probably the basis of any individual. But if you think of women and you think of history and the constant reliance on a partner, so to me, that reliance on a partner for substantiating and being independent, I felt was part of the equation that needed to be eliminated. You need to be with someone by choice because they complement you, because they bring out the best in you, or vice versa. So with education, what you do is that you improve your own strengths, your own skill set, and that will lead you to other opportunities. So I really feel that anyone who tries to bypass education is really doing a hindrance to themselves instead of a benefit. And not everything requires a college degree, and not everything requires. I mean, I'll be the first one to say that maybe the traditional education system itself, all the way through postgraduate, may not be the route. But regardless of what the topic is, you need to educate yourself on it in order to improve or understand fully what it is you're looking for.
Yeah, make wise decisions.
And make wise decisions,
yeah.
correct.
Yeah, I totally agree. What's the most rewarding or challenges part of being an educator today? And what challenges do teachers face that people outside education may not understand?
Oh, that's a heavy question. The two parts are quite heavy. The first part, I want to say, you asked about challenges in education in general. So I'm assuming you mean
what are the rewards
teaching
and or challenges?
Okay, so rewards are always going to be that as a teacher, you played, even if it was a small role, but you played a role in the unfolding of that child. So I have many children that grew up to be adult men, women, married, some not married, and some are veterinarians, others are hairstylists, others are adventure seekers, they're traveling around the world. So I see them, and I'm very much even connected to them through social media platforms where they still pull me in. And I'm thinking, I know I made an impact if they're still reaching out to me and pulling me in to know about how their lives have unfolded. And that on its own is the reward.
Nice.
It doesn't matter the social status. It's the fact that they found their way, and I had a small piece in playing in the role.
Made a difference
of them being able to go that trajectory.
Yeah.
The downside, I would say, as far as teaching in today's world, is we're constantly battling against the unknown. So technology is a wonderful thing, but if it falls in the hands without any education to set you up as to how to use it and why you're using it and what you're looking for and how does that benefit you, it can also become a very negative component. And it's a distraction. It's, as research has shown, the constant blue light, the speed at which these children are being exposed to, even in the best intentions, is constantly redirecting their neurological systems. So if children have an underlying condition, it's aggravating. If children have visual problems like myself, the blue light all day long. So whether it's a Promethean board or a tablet or a laptop, where we went from education all the way to where we are now, that's put a strain. And even when I speak to eye doctors, they have said how they see a peak in the decline in vision with children because of it. So
because of the technology.
Because of the technology.
Use the regular board anymore.
Yes. And although it's a great tool, my personal opinion, it's being overly used. Because if you do something extra for a certain time period is one thing, which is kind of where we were when my daughter was in elementary. They had the computers to do some supplemental work or extra practice or research, like when we used to go to the library, that kind of concept. But everything, think about it, everything right now is digital. From the books, the curriculum on the board, the children, the paper pencil, that's almost non-existent. Everything is typed. And that is where I think we've gone full pendulum, right swing, instead of finding the balance of the two.
Wow. That is very...
And that's my perspective.
It's actually a very interesting thing you said. I mean, I would have never thought about that. That is super interesting. So how can schools better support students emotionally and in mental health today?
Well, right now, for example, the month of October was Anti-Bully Awareness Month. Social workers also came into schools safety. So I do believe that there's genuine effort within districts across the state, and I'm sure nationwide, in addressing the concern of mental health and so forth. From the angle of, again, informative. So educating parents, educating teachers, because even teachers sometimes don't understand what exactly lies under the wording of mental health. Even for themselves, you have to know, and you need to recognize symptoms within yourself that may mean you yourself need to take some time and nurture yourself in order to then nurture your students. So as far as that's concerned, there's a lot of material out there. Teachers now and staff members, if they have contact within the setting, they do take a training. It's mandated for them to take a mental health training. And in their case, it's called youth mental health training. So it does focus on the target group that we work with. So, I don't know if that answers.
Yeah, it does. And it is super important, because that also allows the educator who's with the child most of the day,
Correct.
To pinpoint certain behaviors and stuff that might be underlying issues going up,
Right.
from home or anywhere else.
Right. And there's plans and processes in place as to how to identify it and who to bring into the conversation from the team that's trained or qualified, if it would be the right word, in order to work and intervene. So there's two different forms, the districts, regardless of, I have the experience with Dade and now with Broward. So both districts, I can say, have processes and procedures in place. And so part of it is being proactive and part of it is being intervention. So they're very well into making sure it's fully covered and bringing in personnel when necessary. And God forbid, if there's a tragedy, then it escalates to even more specialized experts to come in and help.
Bringing them, and bringing those in, or referring the child.
Referring the child, exactly.
So, one of the most important things that I've seen is the change in behaviors from parents today on, raising their own child. And I think it's important what role parents and communities play in a child's success. And I see a lot of, social media posts where they make the funny videos, about the Anglo parent versus the Spanish parent and what you did and how you handled that situation. But what role should parents really play in a child's success in education?
I think we go back to partnership, understanding that the school and the household is truly a partnership, and there's only but so much that can be taught and enforced as far as those norms within a school setting. So there is a component that if that foundation is not consistent, if it's not being taught, if it's not being spoken about in the household, then it does transfer over, and that's where the shade of gray happens, and we get into other potential, issues, So when I think of homes, I think, first of all, culturally, every home, depending on the culture within a home, has their own systems of values, norms, morals, beliefs. They're fundamentals. So as a school, we try to stay as neutral as possible. So we follow whatever the rules are established as far as the district is concerned, as far as the laws dictate, well, we need to stay within. And so as far as the personal portion, that would be from home. But we don't know what we don't know, right, as educators. And parents don't know what they don't know because they're not the educator and they don't know all of the criterias or mandates that are embedded and have to be followed by a school. So if I make an exception for you, because
I get
you like green apples and I can't make an exception for her because she likes the red apples, then that puts me in a situation that creates bias. So from the perspectives of schools, I want to say they try to maintain and they do make a very good effort at maintaining fairness across the board, inclusivity across the board. But from the outsider point of view, it may not be perceived that way.
That's cool.
Because people by nature, well, they don't understand me. And it's not about you. It's about the bigger picture and what's trying to be accomplished. So to me, it all comes down to relationships, partnerships, educating, making sure the information's out there, that people have a go-to if they need clarification, so that they can truly understand why certain things are the way they are. And again, public schools, you have to be available for the whole public. So that's a difference between public and private. In a private setting, I can make my own rules. This is my private school. It is what I want it to be. So you're either coming in following the law of the land or you're not.
Right.
But public school is supposed to be accessible for everyone. And therefore, whether it's charter public or traditional public, they must follow whatever is embedded by the laws and the policies and procedures of the districts.
Nice. Thank you. How has education evolved since you started 30 years ago?
Oh, well,
And
you know what? I wasn't feeling so old until right now.
I'm sorry. And what changes do you believe need to happen?
Oof, okay, when I first started, believe it or not, we didn't have computers. Everything was paper pencil. We had lesson plans, grade books. Everything was written. You scored with a little calculator, or you had a little easy pull tab that would give you the percentage breakdown. People met face to face. There wasn't Zoom. It wasn't no Teams meeting. It didn't exist that way. I found that community was welcomed into buildings. It wasn't so much red tape to follow. You were the mom of the student at a school and you were part of the bake sale, and it was just more leave it to beaver,
Right.
My advice, if I have to compare it to something. Whereas in today's world, education and the way the system has unfolded is parents are not just openly welcomed into the school building. There's a security point now. You have to get a clearance with an ID. There are no real big sales. You have to buy it, store product, to then resell it if you're using it for a fundraiser and so forth. So things really have changed. And again, it's due to many incidents that have happened throughout the 3 decades, of my career, which unfortunately created more rigid and more like tight-lipped style policies and procedures. But I feel that has caused a gap within community and school. And what was once a very beautiful partnership is now like two separate entities. And instead of working together, I find that it bashes, and it's not out of harm, because the school system has done what they've done to protect your child. You see?
Of course.
So the intentions are good. I just feel like we need to find a happy medium again, where families and school and the community that surrounds the school truly feels like they're part of it. Have you ever gone to a small town, like let's think northern, or even like the Naples area, and you hear all this cheering in the stadium and you see families and their kids were graduated from high school years ago. And you're like, why are at the high school games?
Still attending games.
They're still attending games. Very involved. There's this spirit, this real big spirit of school pride. And so I think that happens because in those smaller towns, there is that community combination. And in a city, we have become quite divisive. And that's one of the biggest changes that I've noticed from the start of my career, which I was 22, to now at 53. And I even with my own child, I saw it change while she was going through the school system. So it is quite a difference.
So has anything not changed?
What has not changed? Honestly, what has not changed to me is phonics, addition, reasoning, critical thinking. All of that has always existed. The books have always existed. The curriculum has always been there. The method of caring for a child, is there. That hasn't changed. It's just taken on new names. And it's potato, tomato, tomato. And I'm sure if any veteran teacher hears this, they will agree with me 100%.
Of course.
So the new buzz, well, not new, but the buzzwords within the last, I want to say maybe 10 years, for me is the differentiated instruction, the pulling out the children that aren't on the grade level, and we're going to supplement the teaching. And all of this information is really what, when I started my career, was referred to as comp ed. Those were the kids that didn't, were identified as having a need for additional instruction, didn't qualify to get into any type of special education class or get extra, exceptional education services.
Right.
But they weren't just left in the regular classroom. So they got pulled out for a certain portion of the day and were still worked on in small group settings, and back then I was at Coral Terrace Elementary. So when I think of the teachers that did the differentiated instruction, back then comp ed was Miss Moore, so now it's just different, as far as what they call it. And it's also different as far as who gives those additional interventions and time with the individual student or in small group. One of the biggest changes now that we're talking about this is the amount of staff, the amount of teachers. So where you used to have the special education teacher, where you used to have the ESOL teacher, now you have the teacher with the mandates of having to take exceptional education courses to get recertified, to have the ESOL endorsement to be able to get recertified, and so it's added angles to that one educator and eliminating the core person who we would have had 30 years ago.
Oh, that is...
Or even with me as a child, going as far back as then. And that's what I find. So there is more weight on an individual teacher as far as reaching all the children, which brings us to our conversation that we were having earlier. You have to rely on everyone's individual strengths. I'm not necessarily the best person for an ESC situation because I may not have the full background education and preparation to make me the best. You see? And someone else might be, but I have the student. Or language development. Maybe I am not the best for language development. Maybe my thing is mathematics. So it all goes back to working together, maximizing on the strengths of every individual.
No, that's super interesting. I had no idea that. I remember you were my daughter's teacher, first grade teacher. I didn't know that they didn't have those special teachers running those special programs.
Well, back when she was in first grade, yes, but it has really phased differently. So you may have, for example, the school that I retired from was one ESC specialist. And so she would come in and have conversations with the regular classroom teachers, review the child's plans and objectives, what is needed, the accommodations and so forth. But the teacher of the classroom is the one that has to ensure correct and implementing it, along with all the other children that are in there that have their own different needs as well. So when you think about it, do we go to one doctor for all needs? We have doctors with certain specialties,
that's correct,
which will address the need that we have. And that's where I really feel the biggest breakdown of education has taken place.
Thank you for that. This has been very educational for our moms out there. What's that one life lesson beyond academics? What would it be for you?
For me, beyond academics, the one life lesson for me is when anyone finds that perhaps things didn't turn out the way they thought, or they didn't get the job they thought they wanted to get, or the way they envisioned it would happen, that's not the end of the world. It doesn't end there. It actually is the experience they needed that was going to prepare them for the next. So, I have a few sayings that I like. One of them is, it is what it is. So when whatever happens, once you've accepted that reality, you're ready now to really see and decide what your next step is. And the other one is, when one door closes, the other door opens. And
that is so true.
Where a lot of people shortchange themselves is they don't realize that the skills that they already have, that they've developed from their childhood all the way into adulthood, because there are skills that are forming all throughout, even though we don't see it.
For sure.
Those skills, when you identify them, you can start finding other opportunities that will bring all of that into there and give you a whole set of other options that you probably had never even thought of. So I call that think outside the box.
Yep. There you go. Another saying. For our last question, what legacy do you hope to leave behind as an educator?
I think the one legacy for me would be just knowing that even if it was the smallest, maybe something I said, maybe something I did, the fact that I introduced to people, an action that took place, would play a role in the successful outcome of someone's life, regardless of the age. And I guess that would be the legacy itself,
Yeah, of course.
So that when somebody has a moment where they're like, now what? They can remember me and say, well, she always said, and they'll hit the floor running all over again, thinking of some other avenue based on what they bring to the plate. And everyone has something that they can bring to the plate.
Of course. And everybody has somebody that remembers that one person that said something that made a difference.
Correct.
Or made you feel different.
Made you feel different. Yeah.
So thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you, ladies, for being here today with us. Don't forget to follow us on YouTube at Mari.Trilogy. Stay tuned for the launching of this podcast. Have a great day.